Your paycheck is not designed to make you wealthy. It is designed to make you available. Think about that for a second. You wake up every morning, put on your shoes, commute, sit, perform, and come back home. And at the end of the month, after all that energy, after all that time, you're left with just enough to do it all over again next week. You work harder, maybe get a raise, but somehow the lifestyle adjusts, the expenses creep up, and you're still broke, just a more expensive kind of broke. Here's what nobody says out loud at the office orientation, in the employee handbook, or during your annual performance review. The system you're working inside was never architected to make you financially free. It was built to keep you productive, reliable, and just comfortable enough not to quit. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how that mechanism works and the 7 quiet truths that the people who actually build wealth understand, while the rest of us are still waiting on the next promotion. 1. Your salary is a ceiling, not a ladder. Let me start with something that kind of broke my brain when I first heard it. A salary is, and I mean this almost literally, a container. It's a defined, fixed box that your financial life is supposed to live inside. Your employer knows, almost to the dollar, what your ceiling is. They set it. They approved it. They budgeted for it. Here's the thing about containers, though. They don't grow on their own. I remember talking to a guy, an accountant sharp guy, genuinely skilled, who had been at the same firm for 11 years. 11 years. He'd gotten maybe 4 raises in that time, totaling something like a 14% increase. Meanwhile, inflation over those same 11 years had eaten up close to 30% of his purchasing power. So technically, on paper, he was earning more. But in real life, in real buying power, he was poorer than when he started. He was working harder for less. And the crazy part is, he was proud of his loyalty. I'm not saying loyalty is bad, but you have to understand, your employer's loyalty to you has a budget. Yours to them, apparently, does not. The takeaway here is simple but uncomfortable. A salary only rises when someone above you decides it should. Your wealth, your actual net worth, cannot be fundamentally determined by someone else's budget meeting. 2. They benefit from your financial anxiety. Okay, this one is going to sound a little conspiratorial, but stay with me because the math is real. When you are financially stressed, you are, and studies back this up, a more compliant employee. You show up even when you don't want to. You take on extra work without extra pay because you literally can't afford to rock the boat. You smile through the uncomfortable feedback because rent is due in 12 days. Financial desperation is a management tool, not always a conscious one, not always malicious, but it functions that way regardless of intent. Think about it from the other side of the desk. If every employee had 6 months of living expenses saved, had some investments quietly compounding, had income coming from a side project, they would negotiate differently. They would leave faster when treated poorly. They would say no more often. The entire power dynamic would shift. This is why no one at work is handing you a book on index funds during your onboarding. Why there's no whiteboard session on how compound interest works. Why the 401k explanation is buried in a 40-page PDF that nobody reads. Your financial literacy or lack of it is not their problem to solve. And if you stay uninformed, it's actually kind of their advantage. 3. The promotion trap. Here's a pattern I've seen so many times it almost feels like a script. Someone works incredibly hard, gets noticed, gets promoted, takes on more responsibility, gets a raise, usually something like 8 to 12%, feels great for about 3 months, then realizes the new role comes with new stress, new hours, new expectations, and they're now on the hook for a bigger team, bigger problems, and somehow, still, not enough runway to feel financially secure, and so they work harder for the next promotion. This is what I call the ladder illusion. Every rung looks like progress, and each rung is real. I'm not dismissing it, but here's what no one tells you. Climbing someone else's ladder still means you're on someone else's ladder. You can climb all the way to the top and still be one restructuring announcement away from starting over. The people who quietly build real wealth, and I know some of them personally, they don't ignore their careers. They use their careers. The job becomes the funding mechanism for things outside the job. Assets, skills with leverage, income streams that don't require them to show up physically. Promotion is fine, but promotion as a wealth strategy, that's the trap. 4. Time is the asset they're actually buying. Okay, so if you've gotten value from this so far, and I genuinely hope you have, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. I drop these kinds of breakdowns regularly. And honestly, this stuff doesn't find you by accident. You have to put yourself in front of it. Now, back to it. Here's something I think about a lot. What exactly is your employer paying for? Not your creativity, not your potential, not your loyalty, or your dreams, or your personal growth. They're buying your time. Specifically, they are purchasing hours, 40 of them per week, roughly. And the deal, the silent, unwritten deal, is that those hours belong to them. Now, time is the one resource that doesn't replenish. You can earn more money, you can gain more skills, but you cannot get back a Tuesday afternoon in your 30s. You cannot reclaim the year you spent grinding on a project that got shelved. Rich people, and again, I mean the quietly wealthy, not the flashy kind they obsess over this. They ask constantly, how do I make money without selling more of my time? They think in terms of assets, leverage, and systems. Things that work while they sleep, things that compound. Your employer is, in a sense, in the business of buying your most precious resource at a fixed, agreed-upon rate. And most of us agreed to that rate before we truly understood what we were selling. 5. Skills versus salary. The hidden wealth gap. Here's something that sounds obvious once you hear it, but almost nobody actually acts on. The market doesn't pay you for how hard you work. It pays you for how rare and valuable your contribution is. Mopping a floor is hard work. Coding a proprietary algorithm is also hard work. But one of those is rarer, and the market prices scarcity, not effort. This is why two people can be equally exhausted at the end of the day and be nowhere near equally compensated. One of them spent their evenings building a skill set the market desperately wants. The other watched TV, which, honestly, sometimes is the right call. Life is short. But you see the compounding difference over 10 years. The brutal thing about staying in one job for too long, in the same role, doing the same tasks, is that your skills can quietly stagnate, and then the world moves. Technology shifts. The industry evolves, and suddenly, your experience is valued a lot less than it used to be. The people who stay financially ahead treat self-development like a second job. Not obsessively, they have lives, families, rest, but intentionally. They're always asking, what is worth more now than it was 2 years ago? What skill could I build that a company or a client would pay a premium for? Because here's the thing, if your skill set is genuinely rare, you don't wait for your boss to decide what you're worth. The market tells you. 6. The tax code is written for owners, not employees. I'll be honest, this one bothered me for years. Mostly because nobody explained it until I stumbled across it myself. The tax code in most countries, and I'm speaking generally here, is built in a way that systematically favors people who own things over people who work for others. Business owners can deduct expenses. Investors get preferential tax rates on capital gains. Real estate owners access depreciation. These are legal, structured advantages written into the code. Employees get taxed first, before they even see their money. Payroll taxes come out automatically. There's no opportunity to offset income with business expenses. The money is gone before you can even think about where to put it. Now, I'm not saying this to make you angry, though it might, and that's fair. I'm saying it because the first move toward financial intelligence is simply knowing the terrain. Once you understand that the system is structured to reward ownership, you start thinking about how to own something, anything, a small business, even a side hustle with legitimate expenses, stocks, a rental property, something, because the goal, ultimately, is to shift slowly, over time, from purely being a person who earns income through labor to also being a person who earns through assets. Your boss isn't going to walk you through this. It's not in their interest, and honestly, they probably don't think about it in terms of your personal financial journey. But it matters. It really does. 7. Comfort is the most expensive thing you'll ever buy. Last one, and I think this might be the most important. There's a kind of golden handcuff that the workplace puts on you, and you put on yourself called comfort. It looks like a decent salary, a familiar team, benefits, predictability, a team. And these things are genuinely valuable. I'm not dismissing the human need for stability, but comfort has a cost that never shows up on your pay stub. It's the cost of the business you didn't start because the salary felt safe, the investment you didn't make because it felt risky, the negotiation you didn't have because it felt uncomfortable, the The skill you didn't build because you were too tired after another long day of doing work that wasn't really yours. Comfort is not the enemy of happiness, but it is often the enemy of growth. The wealthy mindset, and this is something I've observed rather than inherited, trust me, treats discomfort as a signal. Not a warning to retreat, but a signal that something worth developing is on the other side. They are, on average, more willing to sit in uncertainty for longer because they've learned to trust the process of building, failing, adjusting, and building again. Most employees have been trained gently over years to avoid that discomfort, to stay in their lane, to not take risks, to wait for permission. But permission, in the world of wealth, is something you give yourself. So let's bring this home, because I don't want to just leave you with a list of problems. Here's what I want you to take away. Your salary is a starting point, not a destination. The system you work inside has its own incentives, and they don't always align with yours. Your time is being purchased, and the deal was made before you fully understood its terms. The tax code rewards owners. The market rewards rare skills. And comfort, as lovely as it is, can quietly cost you everything you could have become. None of this means your job is the enemy. It can be a great vehicle, a learning ground, a network builder, a funding source for the life you actually want to build. But you have to see it for what it is, a tool, not the whole plan. The shift I'm talking about doesn't happen overnight. It's not a hack or a shortcut. It's a slow, deliberate change in how you see your financial life, from something that happens to you to something you are actively, intentionally architecting. And that starts with awareness, which, if you've made it this far, you clearly already have. Start small. Learn one new financial concept a week. Redirect a little money towards something that can grow. Build one skill that compounds over time. Have the uncomfortable conversation about your worth. You don't need permission. You just need to start.